Whenever there is a gun in any context, there's always an increased risk. This is something that is totally foreign to Australians. No Australian parent, for example, has really ever had to consider sending their kid to school with a bulletproof backpack. That's the environment that exists in the United States. Every situation where there is a gun, there's always the increased chance for violence. And this anger is rising. I would really make note that these protests are still relatively small compared to the year of global protests that we saw last year. But absolutely, when you see those pictures from Michigan of armed protesters in paramilitary gear, they look like a military force occupying the legislature there. There is always a risk that this could get much, much worse. It only takes one person to set off a chain of events that we don't want to see. But on the other hand, there are people that are genuinely frustrated. They don't understand why their work, which naturally involves social distancing, whether it's, for example, in Michigan, people were annoyed that they couldn't have gardeners over to mow their lawns. That's now been lifted. But those are the sort of competing forces that are here. People are very angry that they're not allowed to provide for themselves and their family. And then, of course, adding in guns to the equation, there is a potential that things could get worse. They may not. But we are seeing that the number of protests in the US is trending upwards, especially in democratic states.
And this all plays into the fact we have an election in the United States this year. Part of Donald Trump's charm for the last few years has been that the economy was doing really well in the United States, and that was one of his key strengths going into this election. Now with the coronavirus impact that's been hit hard, it doesn't seem like it would impact a lot of his supporters, but it would certainly make them more you could say enthusiastic about pushing for these restrictions to be lifted. And you're right that is going to really play out in those Democratic-led states.
Yeah, exactly. So you already have a huge, huge partisan divide in the United States. And when you add in an external force like coronavirus and these lockdowns, the way it's been dealt with politically, especially the way that President Trump has doused fire on the flames in states like Michigan, Wisconsin and Virginia, but then called for calm in Republican-governed states like Ohio. This is really entrenching and activating that partisan divide, and it's not a good thing coming into a presidential election, especially when you're going to need people to get out there and vote. These set of circumstances are something that are quite concerning for those of us who want to see more unity in the United States. That's not the way this is heading. We're seeing an activation on both sides of the political spectrum.